crowds, so thank you. Now I get to have a really fun job tonight. I get to select the winner of our amazing raffle. This is a necklace from Boone & Sons, which is a great family-run jewelry store here in McLean. It's beautiful, and we very much appreciate their support. Now I'm going to get to pick this ticket. Amber's my assistant here, and making sure we do this all fair. No way. Should I do it again? Yeah.
No, don't.
Adam Schaefer. This was not intentional. I would have. Somebody's gonna call the cops. No. Feel like I failed. No. No. Congratulations, Adam. Now we have one more surprise gift for a lucky winner. So please look, if everybody got a gift bag when they came in, please come and see if you have a gold coin. And if you do, then you are the winner of a beautiful set of earrings. So please check your bags. Sorry. Has anyone found a gold coin? All right. Please stand up. And Amber's going to bring you your beautiful earrings. Okay, Amber. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everybody who participated in the raffle. And now I get to introduce some of our honored guests tonight. We're very appreciative at the Independent Women's Forum to enjoy a great relationship with many people working on Capitol Hill. And so I just want to take a quick moment to thank the members of Congress who are with us tonight. The chair of the House Republican Conference, Kathy McMorris Rogers. Thank you. Representative Andy Barr, thank you for coming. Representative Susan Brooks, thank you. Representative Ken Buck. Representative Barbara Comstock. It's my representative, I'm proud to say. Representative Renee Elmers. Representative Martha McSally. Representative Ann Wagner. Representative Mimi Walters. Representative Trent Franks from Arizona. Thank you, Trent. Representative Ron DeSantis. Representative Elise Statotic. Excuse me if I said that wrong. And then Congressman-elect John Fazio and Congressman-elect Brian Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for coming and congratulations. And now to introduce our first honoree is Kathy Gillespie. Kathy herself has been a wonderful friend to IWF and is a true heroine of the freedom movement. She's the co-chair of Constituting America, an organization dedicated to building awareness about the importance of the U.S. Constitution. Kathy, thank you so much for your work and for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Carrie. It is an honor for me to be able to introduce and present the IWF Gentleman of Distinction Award to my husband, Ed Gillespie. You know, IWF is an organization that Ed and I have long admired and supported. I've used information from IWF all throughout my career, as I'm sure many of you here in this room have, and IWF has changed the conversation on issues of importance, not just in Washington, but around the country. And I can't say enough great things about it. And Heather and Sabrina, I'm not quite sure where Heather is, but Sabrina's there at my table. And to the rest of the IWF board and staff, you all just do an amazing job. So thank you for tonight. It's just a wonderful event. Now, in the spring of 1985, I was playing softball. And if y'all stay with me, this will make sense in just a minute. It was my one and only softball season, and I met a guy, and my life was forever changed. Now, I'll never forget that day when I was out on that softball field. It was a cold spring day, and this guy ran out of the field, and everybody was saying, hey, Eddie, we're so glad you made it. Well, I didn't know who this was, and I looked to a friend of mine who was on Congressman Dick Armey's staff, and I said, well, who is that? And my friend said, well, that's Ed Gillespie, our new press secretary. And I thought to myself, well, I need to get to know him a little better, I think. Thanks to an enterprising friend of mine, Ed and I ended up riding home from softball practice in the same car. We began dating a few weeks later. About a year later, we were engaged, and a year after that, we were married. Now, I mentioned that softball meeting because as I look back, everything I know and love about Ed, I could see on that softball team. Ed's a leader and a team player. He's a hard worker. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's scrappy. He has good judgment. He's fun. He has a great sense of humor. As a matter of fact, whenever I lose Ed in a big crowd like this, I just stand for a moment and listen because when I find that infectious laugh of his, that always leads me straight to him. You know, Ed doesn't sit on the bench. He gets in the game. He plays extra innings if necessary. He'll play any position where he's needed. He's always willing to serve. And when given his turn at bat, he hits home runs. Now, Ed served as Elizabeth Dole's campaign chairman in her successful 2002 Senate campaign, and Senator Dole was the first woman ever elected to the U.S. Senate from North Carolina. In 2004, Ed became the first RNC chairman in 80 years to preside over Republicans winning the White House, House, and Senate, just like this year. But also, as RNC chairman, Ed insisted that we continue the very successful W Stands for Women outreach program that was started in 2000. And Ed was a big supporter of that program and even volunteered me to head it up. Now, Ed was also a key advisor in the successful nomination processes of Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Sam Alito. He served as the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia and served as counselor to the president in President Bush's in the last 18 months of President Bush's term, and served as chairman of Bob McDonnell's 2009 campaign for the governor of Virginia. When Ed was chairman of the Republican State Leadership Committee, more Republicans were elected to state office than any time since 1928. And Ed also initiated, as chairman of the Republican State Leadership Committee, a very successful initiative called Right Women Right Now, which recruited women to run for office all over the country and then helped get them elected. Ed surprised the country in 2014 when he came within 0.8 of 1% of unseating Senator Mark Warner. Now, I was not surprised how close that race was because I knew that Ed had run a strong, inclusive campaign based on conservative principles, offering conservative solutions and policies. As a matter of fact, Ed was the only Senate candidate in 2014 to actually offer a replacement to Obamacare. Now, as we all know, Ed is running for governor in 2017, and I know he'll wage a winning campaign. I know he'll wage a winning campaign based on conservative principles and policies that will help get Virginia's economy moving again. This May, right in the middle of the 2017 campaign, Ed and I will celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. And Ed, you are the light and love of my life, and I know that if our son and 2 daughters were here with us tonight, that they would want me to tell you how much they love you too. So I am so glad that I decided to play softball in 1985, And I am very proud to be able to present the award, the IWF Gentleman of Distinction Award, to you tonight. So.
Thank you, Hunt. Thank you, Hunt, so much. That was a lovely introduction, and I have to say, I love conservative women who cherish free markets and personal liberty, but there is one I love more than all of the rest, and that is Kathy Gillespie. Kathy mentioned that we met playing softball, and I have to say, when I was a younger man, I was pretty fast, had some pretty decent speed, and I could catch anything in the outfield. But obviously, the best catch I made on that softball team was one Kathy Gillespie. I want to thank Heather Higgins and Sabrina Schaefer and Carrie Lucas for having me here this evening. I am extremely honored to accept the IWF's Gentleman of Distinction Award. IWF is an effective and strong voice in making clear that, in contrast to the liberal view, all issues are women's issues. And the policies IWF promotes based on the principles of free markets and personal liberty are good for our country. I have to say, I feel a little bit like I'm on the Fox News show Outnumbered here tonight. I'm #1luckyguy to be honored along with Cheryl Batchelder and my longtime friend, Carly Fiorina. Two women with incredible records of accomplishment in corporate America. Because of our friendship, I know Carly's story pretty well, and I know that when she was CEO of HP, her experience as an office assistant in a real estate firm was a formative one that, in addition to her being a genuinely good person to begin with, contributed to her treating all HP employees with respect. Cheryl Batchelder is famous for caring not just about Popeye's franchisees, but for the fry cooks and counter servers at her restaurants. Concern for the well-being of the lowest paid workers, rewarding hard work, providing skills training and opportunity for upward mobility are hallmarks of successful businesses. And they're also hallmarks of successful policies. Policies that are desperately needed right now and very important for women who are more likely than men to work in hourly wage jobs and are hit hardest by wage stagnation. In Virginia, for every one woman who owns a small business, 4 women work in an hourly wage job. In fact, 2/3 of working women in Virginia are paid by the hour. Women who work standing behind a counter in a uniform with their name stitched or pinned on their shirt. They work in assembly lines or in poultry plants or at hotel chains. And salaried women who work in elementary schools and hospital wings and office parks. You know, there are a lot more women working in Kmart's than in C-suites. And our policies best address their needs and concerns. The policies promoted by IWF best meet their needs and concerns. So of course wages and jobs are a woman's issue. And in Virginia, I have to tell you, I'm very focused on that because our wage rates are low. Our wage growth is lower and has been since 2011, lower than the national average. Our economic growth rate last year in the Commonwealth was an anemic 1.4%, and that was the first time in 5 years that it got above 1%. The year before last, Virginia was 48th out of 50 states in the nation when it comes to economic growth. Virginia, bottom 5. I know that's infuriating to all of the Virginians here tonight like it is to me. Because when it comes to economic growth, given our vast natural resources, our fertile lands, our port, our people, our colleges and universities, our natural beauty, our historic landmarks, our location, Virginia should be in the top 5 of states when it comes to economic growth, and we can be with the right policies. And those are policies based on the constitutional principles of limited effective government. Those policies raise take-home pay, help lift people out of poverty, create jobs. Policies like reforming and reducing taxes, repealing antiquated regulations, adapting our schools and colleges to the workforce needs of today and the future. We need to make it easier to open and grow a small business in Virginia, as we need to do all across the country. And with the election results from a couple weeks ago, we'll start to see that more all across the country, and we'll have a little tailwind behind us instead of a headwind in our face to start small businesses. I grew up in a small business, the J&C Market. J&C were Jack and Connie, or as I knew them, Mom and Dad. And in my family, when you turned 12 years old, you got a birthday cake and a present and a 4-hour shift at the JC Market. And stocking the shelves and sweeping the floors, ringing up customers there, I learned a valuable work ethic that served me well all my life. And we all know the worst thing about liberal policies is not just that they kill jobs. They risk destroying the American work ethic. And we know that there's not just economic value in labor, there is human dignity in work, and we need more of our fellow Americans and our fellow Virginians to have that dignity. A second women's issue I'd like to talk about briefly is education. I suspect everyone here believes, as I do, that the proper role of government is not to guarantee outcomes, but to guarantee equality of opportunity. And if you believe that as I do, then I'm sure you also agree that means we have to ensure that every child has access to a safe, quality public school. You know, the first campaign I worked in was for a trailblazing candidate running to be the first woman ever elected to the school board in my hometown. She was a reformer whose surprise victory on election night shattered a glass ceiling. I was 9 years old. The candidate was my mother, Connie Gillespie. So I was especially excited last week when President-elect Donald Trump named a real reformer to be Secretary of Education in Betsy DeVos. She knows that having these reforms are critically important for early childhood, and from schools, high school to college, we need to shake things up and make sure that children have that opportunity. Sadly, in Virginia, as in other states, thousands of students are trapped in failing schools. And I intend to tackle that by giving parents greater control over our children's education, including expanding access to charter schools and passing education savings accounts for parents. Because we know competition is good for everybody. Competition's good for everybody. Dell makes HP better. Chick-fil-A makes Popeyes stronger. And a little competition will make our public schools better and stronger for our children. And make them more likely to produce students who have the skills necessary to succeed in today's workforce and get good paying jobs as high school graduates. That would partly solve a skills shortage that so many employers face today, but it won't solve another major workforce problem. The fact is that today too many job applicants cannot pass a drug screen. We have an addiction crisis in America today, and it is a significant women's issue. In Virginia, we've seen a 30% increase since 2007 in female deaths due to opioid and heroin overdoses. In the 10 years from 2004 to 2014, the last year we've got numbers for, the number of women in state and federal prisons increased nearly 8%, almost double the rate for men in that same time period. I recently spent a couple hours in the Chesterfield County Jail right outside of Richmond with a couple of dozen women inmates there who are dealing with their heroin addiction in a heroin addiction recovery program, a very innovative one. And I was so moved by my experience with them and inspired by them. One of the things we have to do, and Virginia and I will do, is to enact policies that address addiction, recovery, and mental health, and make it easier for those women to reintegrate in society as productive members of it and live the IWF ideal of personal liberty. So, jobs and wages, education reforms, the crisis of addiction, these are women's issues. And they are issues that are best addressed by the principles and solved by the problems solved by the principles of the IWF, principles of personal liberty and free markets that have made America a beacon of hope and opportunity that has drawn freedom-loving people to our shores for centuries. My father was one of them. Came to this country as a boy from Ireland because his father, my grandfather, found work in America as a janitor at a big bank building in Philadelphia. He was a night janitor, and when that bank closed, he would go in after it closed at around 6 o'clock at night, and he'd start on the ground floor emptying the waste baskets and mopping the floors. And over the course of an 8-hour shift, floor by floor by floor, he would work his way to the top story. And the last thing he would do would be to polish the big wooden conference table in the boardroom, get home around 2:45 in the morning on public transportation. My parents, two of the smartest people I've ever known. They did not go to college, but they insisted that my brothers and sisters and I do, and we were first generation on either side of our family to get college degrees. I worked my way through school here at the Catholic University of America. One of my jobs in the morning was as a Senate parking lot attendant, not far from here, parking the cars for the staff that work in the big congressional office buildings a few blocks away. That led to an internship, which led to another job, which ultimately led to my becoming counselor to the President of the United States of America. From immigrant janitor to West Wing of the White House in 2 generations' time. What a country. What a country. My father left a country where if you were born poor, you died poor. Simple as that. For something completely different. America. America. Where you start out in life does not determine where you end up in life because of free markets and free people and the principles that IWF stands for every single day. Thank you all for doing that. Thank you for waging that fight. Thank all of you here for supporting IWF in that effort. Because of these efforts, we will continue to be a beacon of liberty and a land of opportunity. God bless you. God bless the Commonwealth of Virginia. God bless the United States of America. Thank you for this distinction and this honor this evening.
Congratulations, Ed, and thank you so much for a really inspiring and beautiful story. I'm a fellow first-generation American myself, and my name is Nan Hayworth, and good evening to all our friends here. I'm a former member of Congress, and I was privileged to serve with Kathy McMorris Rodgers, who is the first female chair of the House Republican Conference. And I'm also very, very privileged and proud to be a member of IWF's Board of Directors. And I am especially honored this evening to introduce our recipient of the Outstanding Woman in Business Award, Cheryl Batchelder. Cheryl, we applaud you for your remarkable work as a top corporate executive, philanthropist, wife, mother, and champion for limited government. Building a stronger and better America requires leadership. Cheryl embodies that crucial quality in every possible way. Cheryl's an entrepreneur who has both sought and created opportunity. She's created products that improve our quality of life and grow our economy and multiply jobs. That's exactly what our great country was built on. That is the American dream that Ed just described so well. And Cheryl, as you've pursued your business career, you've progressed through a series of very impressive professional accomplishments, remarkable accomplishments. Since 2007, you've been the CEO of Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, forgive me. There's a TV figure who just talked about how for Thanksgiving, that's all he wanted was Popeyes. That was it, right? Yeah, that's Cheryl. That's marvelous. And prior to this, she was president of KFC Corporation, vice president of marketing and product development for Domino's Pizza, and general manager of the Lifesavers division of RJR Nabisco. Cheryl, this is not only a challenging career, but also delicious. Thank you. And Cheryl, your experiences in business have provided vivid cautionary lessons in how government overreach can limit job creation and economic growth. You've said that economics is an ecosystem, and how apt. It's an ecosystem whose goals you envision as including fair wages for every employee and fair prices for customers. That's the essence of free market capitalism. And especially over the past 8 years, and we can all cheer once more that our long national economic nightmare has finally ended. Thank you to so many people here who made that happen. But threading that needle, paying your employees fairly, compensating them fairly, and making sure that your customers get value for their money, it requires extraordinary resourcefulness and persistence, and Cheryl has these qualities in abundance. But even more than that, a great business leader understands people, how to motivate and inspire them, and in this crucial way, Cheryl excels. In a recent interview, she said, "Trust always begins by one thing, listening." And that's the heart of her relationship with both her employees and her customers. I was just talking with Cheryl. It was wonderful to talk with her for just a couple of minutes to get her perspective. And she said, "You know, Nan, I learned the most by talking with our frontline employees and our customers. And that's really what a great leader does. And it's something that all of us can embrace and emulate." It follows, of course, that Cheryl's committed to mentorship. She's truly an outstanding role model for young women and young men who seek to balance their professional and personal aspirations. Cheryl has shared her example in her work and her writing, which is a boon to all of us. And she shared that example in the way she's lived her life. IWF is proud to honor Cheryl's many successes and her continued support of IWF's mission and work. Cheryl, leader and friend, we're thrilled to give you this award. Our Outstanding Businesswoman of the Year, Cheryl Batchelder.
Well, good evening, everyone. I thank you to Nan for that lovely set of remarks. Thank you, Heather, for this opportunity to be with the IWF that you've been such an important part to over these years. It's truly an honor to be recognized around women who share this belief in limited government and free enterprise. To be honest, till tonight, I wasn't sure we would fill a ballroom. So I'm excited to be with you, all of you believers in those important things. It has been my privilege to be the leader of a chain restaurant, which is a franchising model. And if you don't know about franchising, it's the quickest path to the American dream. It offers men and women, Americans and immigrants, the opportunity to own their own business. At Popeye's, the average restaurant owner owns less than 5 restaurants, typically 2 or 3, and creates a great livelihood for their family, jobs in their community, and opportunity for careers. At Popeye's, we've distinguished ourselves by making franchise owners the focus of our business model. We believe that our corporate success is only measured by the success of those that we serve. Someone named Robert Greenleaf became a famous writer around an idea called servant leadership over 40 years ago. And he said this, he said, "At the extreme, there are 2 kinds of leaders. A leader first who largely assumes power for personal interest and personal gain. At the other extreme is a leader who serves first. They also assume power, but for the benefit of the people and the enterprise. He said something that I've carried with me for years, which is that the test of a servant leader is, are the people actually better off? At Popeyes, we wanted to give this idea some substance and some results to lean into, a case study, if you will. We've written a book called Dare to Serve that explains the leadership style that has driven superior performance of our company now for 9 years. We define Dare to Serve leadership this way. It is a leader with the courage to take the people to a daring destination, yet a leader humble enough to go with the people on the path to that place. And we find it's in the tension between the leader's courage and humility that the conditions for superior performance results occur. For you see, serving others does perform. My personal passion and purpose is to develop leaders who are purpose-driven and exhibit competence and character in all aspects of their lives. I will tell you that the small bit of pessimist in me abhors the leaders that have been celebrated in my lifetime that are self-absorbed, high ego, and low integrity, but largely have dominated our magazine covers. The optimist in me, the optimist in me is very excited about the next generation of leaders. Leaders who are going to serve the people, our enterprises well, and do so over self-interest. I think we have the opportunity with the millennial generation to create the best generation of leaders in history. But it's going to require a whole lot more of you to adopt, role model, and coach this generation of leaders to help them determine what it looks like to lead with a moral conscience, with good judgment, with skills, and create places where people thrive. Why is this idea so important of servant leadership? I'll let someone else tell you. His name is Max Stackhouse. He's a retired theology professor from Princeton. He wrote this many years ago in the introduction of a book called On Moral Business. He said this: "Some things are clear. The corporation has become one of the strongest institutions of our day. Families split, but companies endure. Governments fall, but firms expand. The steeples of churches are dwarfed by the towers of industry, and people now say they learn more at work than they did at school. In other words," he goes on to say, "business leaders are increasingly the stewards of civilization. The burden of leadership in the next century is likely to fall on business management in a way that has never been seen before in the case of human history." For me personally, these words have inspired me, but I've also seen them to be true. Someone tonight asked me about one of our restaurants in the country of Jordan in the Middle East, and he said, "You know, it's called Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen." I said, "Yeah, I know." And it serves really good food, but behind that counter is a business model just like we have here, with 7 or 8 nations of people preparing your food, serving you as our guest, and growing in their career path in the restaurant industry. So I have been honored and privileged to serve in the capacity of a global business executive, developing leaders, training up next generation leaders who I hope will demonstrate some of these qualities that I've talked about tonight and create better environments for people to take risks, learn, and grow. I've come to understand that whether you lead in business, government, the professions, the home, or the community, that you too have an opportunity to develop a great next generation of leaders. And I encourage you to join me in that path. We don't want to develop any more legends. We want to develop some legacies. I'm grateful that God's given me the opportunity to serve him in just one corporation, and I hope that it has brought him glory. As I close this evening, I give you my deepest thanks for this honor and the opportunity to celebrate it with you. Thank you.
Next year, we need some rugs under the table. We'll work on that, Amber. Right, the noise. So thank you for that, Cheryl. That was wonderful to hear. From one form of leadership to the next, we often hear that there are not enough female lawmakers, but I often think that we don't talk enough about all of the women who have run for office and who are making a difference. So tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce you to one of these exceptional women, House Republican Conference Chairman Kathy McMorris Rodgers, the fourth highest ranking Republican in the House, and also the recipient of IWF's 2014 Woman of Valor Award. Yeah. Kathy has represented Eastern Washington's 5th Congressional District since 2004 and is well known for her conservative principles and her willingness to work across the aisle. She serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee. She is a strong advocate for members of the military and their families, and she has been focused on talking to more women about limited government, for which we are gratefully appreciative. Kathy has been a partner with IWF for many years now, but this past year she made it a priority to work with us to make sure our Working for Women report and messages were being heard by her colleagues. Through briefings, events, and statements, Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers has been a leader and a strong ally. Tonight, Kathy is here to help us recognize all the other congressional champions who have worked with IWF this year to help ensure our sensible policy ideas are heard. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. What a moment to be in Washington, D.C. And tonight we celebrate many elections, re-electing our majorities in the House and the Senate, electing Donald Trump as our next president. And as of today, we can celebrate Nancy Pelosi's re-election as minority leader, too. It's great to be here this evening with so many friends and colleagues who share a commitment to liberty and economic opportunity. And I want to thank IWF for all of the great work that you do and the leadership of Heather and Sabrina. And Sabrina especially, I've enjoyed the partnership that we have had. I consider you a great spokesman, a great partner, and a thought leader in the conservative movement. So thank you for all that you do. IWF has been laying the foundation for women to be strong leaders by encouraging them, advocating, and redefining that all issues are women's issues. IWF is leading the way by increasing the number of women all across this country who value free markets and personal liberty. You've been on the front lines of this advocacy for many years, and right now we need it more than ever. The opportunity that we've been entrusted with is really humbling, but it's also a great moment for us, and we must lead. Now isn't the time to be taking victory laps or patting ourselves on the back. It's the time to turn this victory into real progress for people all across this country. And it's a time to be working with organizations like the Independent Women's Forum to think big, reimagine our government, and get the people's voice back to the center of it. We need your help on tax reform. We need your help on working families policies, and we need your help to repeal and replace Obamacare. You know, as we inch closer to the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote, I think it's especially important this evening with this group of people to recognize the values and qualities that women naturally bring to leadership positions. According to many surveys, people seek leaders who are good listeners, honest, care about others, problem solvers, the very qualities that are often associated with women. And there's no better example of that than our honoree tonight, Carly Fiorina. When I think of Carly, I think of the word fearless. She's not afraid to go big. running for the US Senate in the big blue state of California, or running for president in one of the most difficult, toughest election cycles our nation has ever seen. Her strength, her courage, her grace under fire is a model of leadership. That's what we want in more women leaders, and quite frankly, all leaders. So I don't know about you, but I am quite excited. I am inspired after this election and the election results. I'm excited about the work that we're going to be doing, and I'm excited to see so many women leading the way. Kellyanne Conway with the distinction now of the first woman to successfully run a presidential campaign. Betsy DeVos, our next education secretary, has already been highlighted. Elaine Chao, our next transportation secretary. Governor Nikki Haley, who's going to be an outstanding ambassador to the United Nations. I'm honored to work with these women and so many who are here tonight who have broke down the barriers and are trailblazers in their own right. They're reflective of a changing workforce in America today, a growing economic force, and it only highlights the need that we have to update our laws, our labor and tax laws, to reflect the workforce of the 21st century. And that's why the work of IWF through their Working for Women report is so important. The ideas and the findings related to flexible work schedules and childcare costs and family leave options and the cost of health care is so important. We have a real opportunity to make a difference and potentially see many of these policies become a reality with our unified Republican government that's ready to roll up its sleeves and get to work. We need to get ready with a bold agenda that's going to make a difference in people's lives, address the biggest challenges of our time, and most importantly, keep the people at the center of this government. So thank you again, IWF, for all that you do and for being an important partner. Tonight, I'm honored to recognize the following members as IWF's congressional champions. So I'll read the list of names, and I'll ask you to stand as I read your names, and then we'll maybe applaud at the end, because it's a long list. Representative Luke Messer from Indiana, Representative Andy Barr from Kentucky, Representative Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, Representative Susan Brooks from Indiana, Representative Ken Buck from Colorado, Representative Mike Kaufman from Colorado, Representative Barbara Comstock from Virginia, Representative Carlos Curbelo from Florida, Representative Renee Elmers from North Carolina, Representative Bill Flores from Texas, Representative Len Jenkins from Kansas, Representative Mia Love from Utah, Representative Martha McSally from Arizona, first female fighter pilot, Representative Kristi Noem from South Dakota, Representative Ileana Ross-Lehtinen from Florida, Representative Elise Stefanik from New York, youngest woman ever elected to Congress. There she is. All right, Elise. What was your vote percentage? What was your vote percentage in your re-election? She's going to be around for a while, which is good. Representative Ann Wagner, Representative Jackie Walorski from Indiana, Representative Mimi Walters from California, and Senator Deb Fischer from the great state of Nebraska. Congratulations to our congressional champions. And thanks again, IWF. May God bless you and your great work, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
I thought we got coffee and dessert, but I've just been given the high sign. I'm the den mother. Thank you, Carrie, for that. That was really unexpected and very sweet. I'm Heather Higgins. I am chairman of the board of Independent Women's Forum, as well as running Independent Women's Voice. And when I think of Independent Women's Forum, I think scrappy, punches above its weight, carrier of authentic feminism before it went off the rails into this leftist Marxist nonsense that has nothing to do with real human beings' lives. And most of all, we're the women's group that really likes men. So I want to thank Carrie and Sabrina and the whole team for doing this really lovely dinner. This is about twice the size of last year's dinner. Sabrina has done an outstanding job with this, particularly this is her baby, and we all really appreciate all the work that you've done in it, and it shows. And I want to thank as well our honorees. Ed, you, like Margaret Thatcher, grew up the child of a shopkeeper, and clearly we need more children of shopkeepers in America because it clearly has a trajectory to it, and hopefully your trajectory goes where hers went. And Cheryl, you are such a role model for so many women just in the way you comport yourselves and what you have done with your life. And I think you'll look around. This is not an old group. There are a lot of young women here who are looking to you and our other honorees for inspiration, and thank you so much for everything that you have done. I now get to introduce our Woman of Valor awardee. And when I think of her, the first thing that I think of is a fighter against long odds. She's a fighter in her personal life. She is a fighter in her corporate boardroom life. She's been a fighter in her political life, taking on challenges that no one else thought possible. She was, as I think we are all very well familiar with, a formidable presidential candidate. With this remarkable, instantaneous, and such a deep command, whether it was economics, national security, foreign policy, education, equal pay, paid leave, health care, immigration, even how to use email. She was proof that you could love the idea of a female presidential candidate and a female president and still think that a Hillary presidency was a terrible idea. To quote a certain someone, I look at that face, that beautiful face, that face that I would have been honored and delighted to have voted for, and what I see is a luminous intelligence, a lapidary wit, and a huge lover of life. Who can forget, if you were blessed to see it, and if you don't, go Google it up because it is so worth it, the myriad instances where she just left her hosts and interlocutors absolutely flabbergasted and flat-footed. And one of my favorites was when you were doing an interview after the first debate with Chris Matthews, and in your fantastically unminced words style, when he asked you, how could you call Hillary Clinton a liar? Why would you do that? She responded, because it's true. And Chris made the mistake of pursuing the line of discussion and was absolutely rattled down with machine gun fire like precision-guided missiles of numerous instances where it was clear that she had lied. And it reminded me so much, Dad would say that to me whenever I was debating someone and he was watching, he'd say, "Hit him again, they're still wiggling." And this is what it was like. I watched these clips just for the sheer enjoyment of it all. The Barbara K. Olson Woman of Valor Award is given in memory of our beloved, one of our 4 IWF founders, who through her courage and commitment helped advance the principles we all hold dear of economic liberty, personal responsibility, and political freedom. If there is one thing I can say with absolute certainty about our awardee this evening in her future, is that she will determine it, as she always has, and that it will have meaning, purpose, and joy. It is therefore with tremendous enthusiasm that tonight, on behalf of the entire Independent Women's Forum Board of Directors, I am pleased to present the 10th Woman of Valor Award to Carly Fiorina.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I am really honored to be with all of you this evening and humble and grateful to be recognized in this way. Thank you, Heather, for those most generous comments and for the wonderful work you have done at IWF. I learned a thing or two from Heather during my presidential campaign. She may not remember, but I remember traveling to her apartment in New York and meeting like a lot of dogs. And how are those dogs, by the way? And getting a few tips. Thank you, Sabrina, as well, for all your leadership. Congratulations to my fellow awardee this evening, Ed Gillespie. About a year from now, we're going to be calling him more than a distinguished gentleman. I think we'll be calling him the governor of the great Commonwealth of Virginia. And Kathy will clearly be an outstanding First Lady. Cheryl, I have been saying for many years that the highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential in others. And the leader's job is to serve. And it is so rewarding and refreshing and uplifting to see a leader who lives those principles day in and day out. Congratulations to you as well for your award. And as you enjoy your dessert and coffee, I want to say what a pleasure it is to gather together with so many American citizens, men and women, who believe that all of us and each of us must play an active role in order to achieve a more perfect union. I've traveled the globe for almost 50 years now. I have seen business from the very bottom, the very small, and the very local, to the very top, the very big, the very global. I have worked for charitable causes and broken bread with people in the most desperate of circumstances. I have done policy and advisory work and dined with presidents and monarchs at tables, groaning under the weight of excess. Over the last 3 years in particular, I have spent countless hours in American living rooms, dining rooms, school cafeterias, VFW halls, Kiwanis clubs, even a global pork congress. I have spent time in every state in our nation and discussed our politics and our problems. First, because I was a leader of a political organization called Unlocking Potential, which re-engaged women back into the political process, then of course as a presidential candidate, and for the last 9 months in particular, campaigning for other candidates, up and down the ballot all across the country. In other words, I have been very fortunate to have seen and experienced a great deal. I've often remarked that I learned the genius of our Constitution and the root of our American exceptionalism not at law school, where I dropped out after less than a semester, nor through the study of political science or government. I was actually a medieval history and philosophy student,
before I became interested in politics, and perhaps that is why I had to start my business career as a secretary. No, I figured out why our Constitution is so unique and so important, and why we are such an exceptional country by going to work, living life, and seeing the world. I learned in the course of my life and my work and my travels that everyone has potential, far more than they realize. I learned that people can figure out how to solve the problems that impact them if they are given the opportunity, the tools, the training, the support to do so. I learned that power concentrated for too long in too few hands eventually becomes power abused, no matter how wise the people or good the intentions. I've also learned along the way that progress requires pragmatism, not perfectionism. That real problem solving requires prioritization. And perhaps most importantly, that positive change demands a belief in possibilities rather than resentment over limitations. And so tonight I want to speak to you briefly in praise of pragmatism and problem solving and possibilities. This election, up and down the ballot in state after state, this election was a triumph of pragmatism. For all the pollsters and the pundits and the political professionals expressing shock over the outcome of this election, from the White House to the sweep of Republicans in state houses across this nation, I remind them of a consistent finding of Gallup. 80% of Americans believe the federal government has grown incompetent, corrupt, and allows problems to fester. 80% of us believe that we have grown a professional political class and a business all around politics that has grown to care more about their own power and prestige and privilege than on getting the people's work done. 80% means that virtually all Americans agree, men, women, young, old, rich, poor, from every walk of life and every ethnicity. Things just weren't working very well anymore. Most people did not see their own lives getting better. In fact, I know from my travels across the country that most people felt a growing sense of powerlessness over their own lives and little opportunity to solve their own problem. I've met these people, the coal miner, the farm worker, who see their jobs and their livelihoods being taken away by their own government through excessive regulatory overreach. The single mom trying to disentangle herself from a web of dependence woven over generations, who finds for every step forward she wants to take in her life, the system forces her to take 2 steps back. The veteran trying to navigate his way through a Byzantine bureaucracy. The dishwasher who became the restaurant owner and is now just hanging on every day to stay in business. Or the drug addict who I met on the side of a street in New Hampshire, who's found a recovery program that works, but knows that the program soon will close its doors for lack of funding and doesn't know where to turn. This election, Americans had a pragmatic response to their realization that they were losing power and not moving forward anymore. They said, we need change, not more of the same. They said, we need to smash the bureaucracies that have soaked up too much money and concentrated too much power for too long in too few hands. We need to restore power and money where it belongs, in states, in communities, in families, in citizens. We need to vote for people who actually believe in citizen government, not just more big government. Americans know it will not be perfect, but I don't think they expect perfection. Americans are not perfectionists. Americans are pragmatists, and they know that we will make progress. We have problems. We always have. We always will. That is life. But actually solving problems requires setting priorities. And so this election, Americans said, for example, educating our children is more important than arguing about who gets to use which bathroom. This is not a sign.
This is not a sign of disrespect or intolerance towards anyone. It is rather a common sense admission that priorities matter. We have a healthcare problem in this country. It costs too much and some cannot get what they need. Everyone agrees. But it is simple common sense to reject Obamacare, a law that punishes most to help far fewer and that doesn't solve the problem. It is simple priority setting to say we actually should not create yet another government agency, such as the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau under Dodd-Frank, before figuring out what went wrong with the 26 agencies who were supposed to be minding the store and failed to see or prevent the financial crisis. And citizens said creating more jobs is actually a higher priority than a global climate agreement that cannot cool the Earth's temperatures but will destroy more jobs. I was recently engaged a week or so ago in a mentoring session for mid-career businesswomen, and I was asked what I looked for in someone that I was hiring. I talked about courage. Risk-taking requires courage, and without risk, there is no progress. I talked about character. Without character, the wrong things happen. It is character that recognizes when principles must be preserved, even in the face of difficulty. I talked about collaboration. Nothing worthwhile is ever accomplished by someone acting alone. Progress is always a team effort. But mostly, I talked about a sense of possibility. There are people, you know them, there are people who look at a job and see its limitations. They see its boundaries. They say, they won't let me do this. I shouldn't do that. I'll get criticized for this. That goal can never be achieved. There are people who will look at the exact same job, the precise same set of circumstances, and see instead possibilities. Those who see possibilities always achieve more. A sense of possibility is more powerful than skepticism or cynicism or defeatism. Optimism makes progress possible. Pessimism rewards the status quo. This sense of possibility, this optimism, this is the genius of and the exceptionalism of our nation. We have always been optimistic enough to believe that a more perfect union could be conceived. Optimistic enough to trust in people's capacity for self-government. Optimistic enough to know that a system of checks and balances that disperses power into the hands of the money will achieve more liberty, more justice, more opportunity than power concentrated in the hands of the supposedly wiser few, even when it is messy and unpredictable and imperfect. This faith in our fellow citizens is the ultimate optimism. It is the belief that we all have the potential to be good and to do good. America is not exceptional because our citizens are inherently better people than others. Human nature is pretty much the same the world over, although cultures and values differ. We are exceptional because at our core we believe in potential. At our core we believe in possibility. And because of this core belief, more things have been more possible for more people, from more places and in more circumstances than anywhere else on earth. This is what the progressive left gets so profoundly wrong. The philosophy of the progressive left has been about punishing some to ease the resentments and grievances of others. But that is not what our nation is about. This nation has never been about punishing some to relieve the grievances of others. This nation has always been about creating more possibilities for everyone. And nowhere has the left gotten it more wrong than on feminism. Feminism started out being about empowerment, allowing women to participate as fully equal citizens and contributors. But somehow along the way, the left hijacked it. My candidacy for president was called an offense to women. Apparently, because I don't believe the things the left says I should believe. Feminism became about strict adherence to a litany of left-wing causes and resentments. It is why the work of IWF is so important. Here is my definition of a feminist. A feminist is a woman who uses all of her God-given gifts and lives the life she chooses on her own terms. She can homeschool 5 kids, or she can run for president. She can form her own beliefs and defend her own opinions. She is a fully capable citizen of this great land, and it is why I said over and over and over again, as a proud feminist, I will never vote for Hillary Clinton. As American women, we know we still face some unique challenges that men do not. We also know that we are the most educated, liberated, powerful generation of women in history and throughout the world. Our lives are filled with endless possibilities for impact, for positive contribution, for leadership, for progress. And the work that IWF does and that all of you support is proof of that. The progressive left believes in limitations, resentments, grievances, zero sum. Some must lose for others to win. Some must be punished so others can make progress. Only government or some wise few can adjudicate between competing grievances and decide who wins and who loses. Americans, pragmatic, problem-solving, believer in possibility Americans are rejecting this philosophy. This is a nation of possibilities, a citizen government, a government of, by, and for the people, all the people, regardless of who you are, or what you look like, or where you come from, or how you start. A government like that, by, of, and for people like that, must be fought for. Let's face it, our political discourse isn't always civil. And so sometimes, especially in this city, consumed by politics, sometimes, instead of arguing politics, let us praise. Let us praise the pragmatism, the problem-solving skills, and the sense of possibility that we share as Americans. Progress has always required these things. We have achieved so much in our nation's history, but there is always more progress to be made. Thank you for this great honor. God bless you all, and thank you for the work you do.
Just a quick goodbye and let people know that we will have a post-dinner reception underneath around the Christmas tree, not underneath, around the Christmas tree in the main hall. So we hope to see many of you there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next year.